For the better part of a decade, we've all been told this one story. You know the one I'm talking about. Millennials, the generation that was supposed to save the American city. They were the ones revitalizing downtowns, choosing cool coffee shops and walkability over a house with a lawn. It was a great story. But it turns out the ending is a little different than we expected.
Yeah, that was the promise, right? A whole generation putting down roots in the city. But the reality? Well, it's something totally different. We're actually seeing a huge, measurable out-migration. It's a seismic shift, and it's leaving a massive question mark hanging over the future of big cities like New York and Chicago. The story has flipped. It's not about moving in anymore, it's about moving out.
So you have to ask, what on earth changed? How did a generation that was practically defined by its love for city life suddenly start leading the charge to the suburbs? Well, the answer isn't that they suddenly fell in love with minivans. It has everything to do with cold, hard numbers.
Let's be really clear about this. This isn't a story about changing tastes. It's not about a sudden, desperate need for a backyard barbecue. Nope. This is a financial story, plain and simple. It's about an entire generation being forced to make an impossible choice between the city they love and a future they could actually, afford.
The real reason this is happening is because of what you could call a broken economic contract. See, previous generations had these basic financial promises, like if you work hard, you can buy a home and build some wealth. For a lot of millennials in our biggest cities today, that promise is just completely off the table.
And if you want to see just how broken that contract is, just look at this. For the baby boomers, a typical house cost about 3 times their annual income. Pretty manageable. But for millennials, in those same cities, that number has jumped to a staggering 9 times their income. The math just doesn't work. It's this brutal arithmetic that's forcing everyone's hand. And the source material we looked at puts this trade-off so bluntly. Millennials started to realize they were trading away their entire financial future, their ability to save, to invest, to have a safety net, all for the perks of city life. Like living near a great coffee shop. And eventually, that just wasn't a trade they were willing to make anymore. And hey, it wasn't just about buying a house. Let's talk about renting. $4,000. That can be the monthly rent for a tiny apartment in some of these places. I mean, how are you supposed to save for a down payment or for retirement or for anything really when that's your starting point? That rent check just becomes a black hole that swallows your financial goals.
For years, there was one thing that kept people tied to these insanely expensive cities: the high-paying job. That job was the anchor. But then, the pandemic hit. And remote work became the catalyst that didn't just loosen that anchor, it completely shattered it. All of a sudden, the entire financial reason for paying a crazy premium to live in the city just collapsed. I mean, why pay New York prices when your office is your laptop?
At the end of the day, it's all about a massive shift in priorities. Sure, life in your 20s might have been all about that urban glamour and the city experience, but as millennials started hitting their 30s and 40s, the focus changed to long-term stability. Things like building home equity and just having some real control over your finances. This isn't a retreat. It's just a totally rational financial decision.
Okay, so we get why this is all happening, but what are the consequences? What happens next? Well, this migration is creating these huge ripple effects all across the country. One source calls it the Great Rebalancing, and this is where the story gets even more complicated.
This table tells a really fascinating story. Check it out. In New York City and Chicago, you see a net loss of millennials. But look who's moving in: Gen Z. At the same time, you've got Sunbelt cities. We're talking Austin, Phoenix, places like that, seeing a massive flood of millennials. It's like a generational replacement is underway. The big cities are becoming a revolving door. The younger Gen Z crowd moves in for their first jobs, while the slightly older millennials are moving out to actually build their lives somewhere else.
So now you have Gen Z as the new entry-level urbanites. They're taking the torch, drawn in by the same exciting opportunities that brought millennials to the city a decade ago. But here's the million-dollar question. If the economics of the city don't fundamentally change, aren't they just doomed to face the exact same financial cliff in a few years? Are these cities just kicking the can of unaffordability down the road to the next generation?
And the stakes here are incredibly high. For the cities themselves, this migration is being described as nothing short of an existential threat. Think about it. Empty office buildings, way less foot traffic for small businesses, a shrinking tax base. It's a potential real estate tsunami that is forcing these cities to rethink their entire economic model from the ground up.
So, what does this all mean for the future? Well, it's easy to see this exodus as just a crisis.
but it could also be a huge opportunity. It's a forced moment of reinvention, a chance to completely reimagine what the purpose of a city even is in the 21st century. So let's just put a pin in it. The Millennial Exodus, what is it really? It is not a failure of city culture. It is a direct, logical consequence of unsustainable economics. It's a massive, generation-wide shift in priorities, from valuing short-term experience to demanding long-term financial equity. And all of this leaves our cities with one fundamental challenge. It's not enough anymore to just be a brilliant hub of culture and jobs. The real question for the city of tomorrow is this: what does it have to become to balance all of that brilliance with the simple possibility of a financially sustainable life for the people who want to call it home?